So God has a plan for each one of our lives. And one of my favorite verses is Jeremiah 29:11, and it says, for I know the plans that I have for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, to give you a future with a hope. And I think a lot of times we don't realize how well our lives are planned out by God, and how He just wants to lead us through that life. And I think I first got a glimpse of that when I was 16 years old. I was about 6 months after I started to believe in God, and I was sitting in church, and our pastor that day for his sermon decided to share about his life. And he said that when he was 13 years old, he was a farmer in Canada, and one day he was just driving his tractor, and he heard this voice from heaven say, "You're going to be a pastor someday." And when he was 18, he just felt like he was supposed to join the army, and so he volunteered and he joined, and he just missed the draft, and because of that he got put on this safe island in Canada. And one day he's eating at a restaurant, and he looks up and he sees the waitress, and he thinks, oh, she looks like a nice person, and God says to him, she's gonna be your wife someday. And then he's walking down the street, and he just sees this sign in a vision say, "Turn here for oil." And he turns there. That's where he starts going to church. He gets filled with the Holy Spirit. And that lady, the waitress, ends up going to the same church, and they end up getting married and then moving to Seattle and starting a church. And when they started the church, they were really poor. And so he used to build houses on the side to make money. And one day he's just hammering away, and he's talking to God, and he was like, "God, I was going to become a rich farmer, but I became a poor pastor for you, so help me." And God, he doesn't know like if it was in a vision or if he actually got taken there, but suddenly he found himself on the side of a mountain, and he sees this log cabin, and he's like, "Where am I?" And suddenly this topographical map of Mount McKinley appears in his hands, and there's this area of land marked off. And when he comes back from his vision or being there or whatever, he tells his business partner, "This just happened to me." And his business partner just happens to have a topographical map of Mount McKinley, and so he pulls it out, and he's like, "Okay, show me what you saw, like draw out the piece of land," right? So he draws out the piece of land, and the partner's like, "Oh my goodness, that's my land. So God must want us to go there and mine there." So they go up to Alaska on Mount McKinley and start mining. And then one day, the pastor just hears God say, "I want you to go to Glacier Creek and stake a claim there." And he goes, and you need to do it right now. So he goes there, and when he's there, he stakes the claim, and he comes back, and when he's coming down the mountain, there's these three miners, and they're like, "Oh, we're gonna go stake a claim at Glacier Creek because there's gold there." So God actually gave the pastor a gold mine, and so he was able to build our church, send people on missions. And after a while, the government shut it down for environmental reasons, and so the pastor was poor again. And so one day he goes to this junkyard for total cars, and he sees just this hand appear, and it points at a car, and he knows he's supposed to take it and fix it. And he didn't know anything about fixing cars, and so for 2 days he kind of struggled with it. And then he was just like, "Wait a second, I saw a hand appear, like how supernatural is that? How can I deny this is God?" So he gets that car and he brings it home, and God just tells him how to fix cars. He knew nothing about fixing cars, and so that's what he ended up doing until the government settled his claim. So anyways, I'm listening to all of this, and I'm like, what? Does God do that? Does God talk to one person and tell them all these details of their life? And I just was amazed because I didn't know God could do that. I thought you can talk to God, but I didn't know God would talk back to you like that. And at the very end of the sermon, he said, "Young people, have you ever asked God what he wants you to do with your life?" And I remember just thinking, no, I didn't think God would tell me. And we used to sit in the front row. It's my senior year in high school, and I'm filling out all my college applications, and they're all asking, what are you going to major? And so I was really thinking about, what am I going to do with my future? And I didn't know, I thought maybe I'd just become an engineer because that's what my parents wanted. And but when the pastor asked that question, I felt like he was talking to me. And at first I was really scared. I was like, what if God tells me to be a missionary in a third world country? I was like, my parents would never go for that because they want me to get a good education and a good job. Because our idea of missionaries back then were like people who couldn't get real jobs became missionaries. And so being the child of immigrant parents, they wanted the best for me. And I knew like if God said something to me, then it would trump my parents. And I didn't want to disobey my parents. And so I just decided, you know what, I'm not going to ask. Because if I don't ask, I don't know. And then everything's good because I'm not disobeying anyone. And that worked until Friday. And then Friday night, I was just like, God, please tell me, you know, what you want me to do. Even if it's a missionary in a third world country, I'll do it. And right then, I just saw a vision of me as a doctor. And I knew I was going to become a doctor. And you totally helped me do that.